Sadath here, and we'll start our meeting in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, Saumya. Hello. Good morning. Yeah, you are also muted.
Hello, good morning, ma'am. Patel, ma'am. Hello.
Patel, ma'am, you're on mute.
Yeah, somebody is muting me continuously. I unmuted. Yeah. So
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah. Good morning, Dr. Desai. Yeah. Good.
Actually, I think they are managing from there.
Good morning, Pandey. Good morning.
I said congratulations for choosing such a pressing issue of work-life balance.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Narayan. Are you in Delhi or Assam? Yeah.
Are we visible somewhere?
Direct to the WCD.
Start.
Yeah.
Start. Start.
Yeah.
Hello. A warm good morning to everyone.
Good morning. Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am. So I am Anvar Sadath, Training and Research Officer at the State Resource Center for Women, Department of Women and Child Development, Government of Delhi. As part of our week-long International Women's Day celebration, the Department of Women and Child Development, Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi is pleased to have you all here for our panel discussion on novel techniques of work-life balance for working women in the evolving COVID-19 scenario. Before we begin, I wish to bring a few instructions into your notice. Kindly keep your microphones muted during the program unless asked otherwise. You may type your questions in the message section in case you wish to ask a question to any panel member. Often, work takes precedence over everything else in working women's lives. They decide to succeed professionally can push to set aside own well-being. Creating a harmonious work-life balance or work-life integration is critical, though to improve not only the physical, emotional, and mental well-being, but it's also important for the career. In short, work-life balance where a person equally prioritizes the demands of one's career. In fact, work-life balance is a state of equilibrium where a person equally prioritizes the demands of one's career and the demands of one's personal life. There are multiple reasons for poor work-life balance of working women, like the supermom syndrome. In the supermom syndrome, a woman is in the delusional belief that a mother is capable of doing all things for all the people in her life at all times while perfectly managing herself. And also there are other reasons like increased responsibilities at work, working longer hours, increased responsibilities at home, etc. But this can be managed. A good work-life balance has numerous positive effects, including less stress, a lower risk of burnout, and a greater sense of well-being. So today, we have the best people on board as moderator and panel members to enrich us with their valuable insights in helping us to have a good work-life balance. So now let me take this opportunity to welcome all our panel members, participants, and our moderator. First, I wish to welcome our Secretary of the Department of Women and Child Development, Government of Delhi, Ms. Madhu Garg IAS. As a panel member, we will be talking about bureaucracy and work-life balance of women. And we have Dr. Rashmi Singh IAS, Director of the Department of Women and Child Development and Special Secretary cum Director Social Welfare as our moderator. I welcome Madhu ma'am as well as Rashmi ma'am to this program.
Thank you very much.
Now,
Thank you very much.
yeah. Now we have Ms. Preeti Dimalo, Chair of FICCI, Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industries Diversity and Inclusion Working Group on Gender Parity. She is also a global head of the Diversity and Lead Group, Tata Consultancy Services. I welcome Ms. Preeti Dimalo to the program.
Thank you, Anvar. Good to meet everyone else.
Welcome. Yeah. And now I wish to welcome Dr. Saumya Uma, Associate Professor at Jindal Global Law School, OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat, Haryana. A warm welcome to you too, ma'am. And we have Professor Vibhuti Patel. She was a professor at Advanced Center for Women's Studies, School of Development Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences from 2017 to 2020 after her superannuation from SNDT Women's University, Mumbai in 2017. A warm welcome to you too, ma'am. We have Dr. Nina Pandey. She's a well-known educator and social worker who currently works at the Delhi School of Social Work as an associate professor. She's a member of Sexual Harassment Committee of Delhi Police and also a life member of National Association of Professional Social Workers in India. A warm welcome to you too, ma'am. Happy to have you here. And we have Dr. Aparna Joshi, Assistant Professor at Center for Human Ecology, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, and Director of ICALL Counseling Services. A warm welcome to you too, ma'am. And last but not least, I wish to invite all our participants without whom we cannot hold this meeting and without whom this meeting will be meaningless. A warm welcome from the bottom of my heart to all the participants in here. Now, let me invite our director, Dr. Rashmi Singh IAS, to moderate and carry forward the session. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Anvar. I hope I'm audible. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay, so, good morning, everyone. And at the outset, let me say that it is something which is very, I would say, touching for us. The fact that, some of the youngsters in our team have taken this initiative today to bring such a diverse and rich panel together. And, this is again something that in our daily life, all of us, I think all the panelists are women who live this topic, in terms of their practical lived in reality, day in and day out. And today they have actually given us an opportunity to reflect on it. And once again, I'm really thankful to everyone, the very esteemed panel, to be able to, join together and be able to, not only give and share their reflections, but to a small team. Why I say small is that, well, if somebody goes by the number, it may appear to be who is really the audience. But I'm telling you that, in terms of probably the in-house capacity of our own team, working within the Department of Women and Child itself, many of the officers, in-house officers who are probably dealing with a lot of these issues at the policy level, say the State Resource Center for Women, then we have the Women Desk. So they are looking at various policy issues. So I'm sure that, the reflections which are thrown today, we are able to feed into some of the critical areas that we need to look at when we, understand the dynamics of the techniques of work-life balance for women, especially at a time, when we are looking at COVID-19 scenario. The world has changed, the vulnerability has changed, there are new opportunities along with new challenges. And we are also faced with a situation where women's employment, has been kind of faced with a challenge more than ever before. So, what are these areas that we need to look at? What are the solutions and what are some of the things which are tangible but not so tangible in terms of stress, in terms of emotional well-being, in terms of various kinds of insecurity, in terms of increasing burden of care work, so for those, many who might have their spouses losing their job, or loss of other bread earners in the family, or the women themselves, being faced with, various kinds of challenging situations which threatens their livelihood further. So I'm sure that today, with the kind of people who are therein, with a bureaucrat like Mrs. Madhu Garg, the secretary, then, the social work, corporate sector, academia. So, as everybody was introduced before, I think it's somewhere very important to see the different perspectives emerging today, based on your own experiences, which helps us to dwell on the policy better. So without going, further into the topic, I think it's really important that we go by experts, giving us an overview of the topic itself, for which I would like to invite Dr. Vibhuti Patel, who's the professor and head of the University Department of Economics, and holds a doctorate in economics. So, with her very rich background, extensive work, research work in this field, I'm sure that, Dr. Patel would be able to give the overview based on which maybe we can all structure our thoughts even better. So over to you, Dr. Patel. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm Dr. Vibhuti Patel. I think, yeah. Dr. Patel has to unmute. Yes.
Okay. Oh my
Dr.
God.
Patel,
Okay.
over to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Rashmi Singh and Dr. Anvar Sadath for choosing this topic, which is so pressing. It is so important for our lives. And as you said, that all of us are leading this life of work-life balance. And my co-panelist, Ms. Madhu Garg, Ms. Prati De Mello, Dr. Saumya Uma, Dr. Aparna Joshi, my co-travelers, both Saumya and Uma in the women's movement, and Dr. Nina Pandey. I see many PhD scholars and also the government departments officers. Today's topic is very important because work-life balance, even Before COVID-19 pandemic, it was treated as a very most urgent social challenge, societal challenge in the context of declining work participation of women because of the 4 types of major responsibilities that women have to shoulder: childcare, elderly care, their own self-care, and also the question of commuting and the very stressful work life that they have. Even in 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development also emphasized that work-life balance, as a large number of women have entered the workforce in modern economy where home and workplace are separated and the distance is quite high. Although work-family balance affects men and women, it still primarily concerns women due to gender norms that see housework and care work of the family members as a primarily a women's responsibility. So work-life balance and gender issues before lockdown were not ideal regarding women's rights to remunerated or outside of the work or homework. COVID-19 crisis in the work life has exacerbated these pre-existing inequalities in the care burden. Home working is one initiative that has been promoted as a way of improving the work-life balance even in a pre-COVID era, and currently under the pandemic, we have seen working from home has at least become a norm among the organized women in the organized sector who have internet connectivity. Women are facing increased domestic work burden in the wake of children and earning members being confined to home after lockdown. Middle and upper class educated working women employed who were working from home as they have information technology enabled communication channel. They also must juggle with housework, childcare, homeschooling, and office work without support of domestic help. This is for women in the organized sector who are relatively better off and economically secure and constitute only 6% of the Indian women workforce. It is important to acknowledge that domestic workers working in their homes ease their burden of care work so that educated middle class women could enter the workforce. Women at the bottom of the informal employment pyramid, which is a part-time work, contract, unorganized, home-based work, workers, they have no official status. Gross underestimation of women's work and paid below subsistence wages. And this informal sector women constitute 94% of the workforce. Dr. Rashmi Singh also talked about them in her introductory remark. In the absence of childcare facilities and protection of labor laws, women in the informal sector must walk a tightrope walk to juggle between responsibilities of work life and also family life under Damocles sword of arbitrary loss of life. Anytime the employers can throw them out. And that's what happened in a massive way, not only in India, all 191 countries which were affected by the pandemic triggered lockdown. A workplace often, like it's a place which disproportionately burdens women employees and as well as women workers. That includes workload as well as emotional labor and relational labor. Relational labor is very important within the workplace. And historically, women have been doing this kind of a work of community management and also the emotional burden they take of maintaining human relations. Currently, women of all caste, class, religion, and ethnic backgrounds are in the workplace. However, this has increased responsibilities for women, both working professionally and still largely carrying out burden of work in the home. And this dual responsibility can increase stress, compromise physical and emotional health, and lead to a burnout and lower work productivity. Studies under the pandemic have also shown maternal fatigue and exhaustion of working women due to heavier burden of cooking, cleaning, caring under the, and also the health emergency that they have to attend to. Now, coronavirus pandemic has increased disparity and stress among women as well. Women health workers are more likely to be exposed to coronavirus due to many working in essential services such as healthcare, doctors, nurses, ayabais, Anganwadi workers, accredited social health activists like ASHA workers, sanitary workers. They constitute 70% of the frontline health workers in our country, and even globally, the UN data, UN Women data shows the same. So most caregivers at home and in our community are also women. In addition, women are homeschooling children, caregiving for parent-in-laws and family members. Crashes have closed down due to pandemic. ICDS centers have closed down. Moreover, there is a significant financial impact on women who are unable to work due to their increased responsibilities. Data from the rapid assessment surveys have shown that in all countries, women are more likely to see increase in both unpaid domestic and unpaid care work since the spread of COVID-19. In addition, they are also more likely than men to say they oversee performing all three activities: unpaid childcare, unpaid adult care, and unpaid domestic work. On the contrary, men tend to concentrate on fewer tasks like shopping for the household and playing with the children. This is what the UN Women has to say. So work from home and work at home, like women handle most of the unpaid work of chores of childcare, homeschooling, elderly care. This is what again told by the McKinsey report, COVID-19, gender equality, countering the repressive effect, which was released on 15th of July 2020. And it comes to also the number of hours, hours invested in unpaid care work. There we see that Indian women spend 299 minutes per day unpaid work. Men spend 90 minutes of work. This is the report released by government of India. There is an echo. I think people will have to mute. Please mute yourself. There is echo effect. Yeah. So this is that the government of India's report also shows that there is a disparity in this. So this report was released 2 months back. It can be downloaded. It is based on the data on 20 recall method of time use analysis. So this paid and unpaid work of women and men, time use survey 2019 by Ministry of Statistics and program implementation by Government of India reveals that Indian women spend 299 minutes, nearly 6 hours a day on unpaid work, while men spend 99 minutes. So even prior to pandemic, there were pay inequalities and discrimination among women in the workplace, especially women workers in informal sector who are largely from the socio-economic weaker section. Amid these challenges, there are experiencing like significant stress due to social stigma and coronaphobia. As such, it is critical that employers carefully reflect on ways in which women are disproportionately overburdened and how this extra work limits their advancement opportunities as well as their overall well-being. So employers should make efforts to transform the workplace structures and policies to better support women's contribution. The gender economist and also the women's rights movement has been asking for past 4 decades that we need to redistribute care work. It is not only women's work. We have to change the gender norms. Every member of the family and every member of the community has to share burden, take the responsibilities of care work. So we need to transform social norms. We need to engage with men and boys, and we have to make care work affordable and accessible in terms of care services. We also need to recognize the state and that employers, they need to acknowledge the importance and the contribution of care work. And we also need to reduce care work where it is a very drudgery prone and hazardous work, and we need to introduce technology. So society and family members must stop guilt tripping women, working women, which is a very important. And in our country, we see that even 40% of women with MBA degree, they also don't enter the workforce after marriage and maternity, mainly because of guilt tripping. It is not that they can't organize the domestic help. So working women must be encouraged to recognize that perfect balance between the work and home life is unattainable myth, as Mr. Anvar Sadath also told us in the beginning. Instead, consider work among the multiple life roles that you manage along with other roles, and each role may require more effort and time than others across the country, across the course of the year, and also throughout your life. Seek help from from others. Talk about this issue and environments to share the load, and prioritize your role can help you decide how best to manage your time across your various roles and responsibilities. There are other experts also in this field who are going to examine other dimensions. So I'm not they will be enlightening us about the coping strategies that women have evolved over last 11 months when they are doing multitasking and also increased workload because of the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Dr. Patel, for underscoring certain huge paradoxes which are there today, and which probably we as a nation are also kind of grappling with, how to make women's work count. So that's one of the first policy takeaway, that in terms of the unpaid work, in terms of the care work, the unpaid work, which is not getting counted in the economy. And I do believe, I do understand that there are countries, say some Scandinavian countries where, there've been certain thing like a, satellite, kind of accounts, yeah, where you make this kind of an unpaid work count, so that even if it's not monetized, even if the work is not doesn't get monetized, at least there's a count happening when you look at through methods like time use survey and all, it can get quantified, the work can get quantified. That and so maybe Delhi is once we as a department kind of have these in our radar, then maybe in terms of policy, something is set into the motion, and for which I now have the pleasure to invite Mrs. Madhu K, who herself has also studied law and held various assignments, and recently she's come from the Andaman and Nicobar, and her work as a career bureaucrat, as also as a mother, I would say that kind of balancing between the two. So both from the perspective of a personal journey and from the perspective of what she thinks that from the policy, from this particular deliberation, what are the issues which can be expected to enrich our learning in the process. So over to you, madam.
Thank you, Rashmi. I hope I'm audible to everybody. I would kind of stick to the challenges that come in the bureaucracy while we are trying to attain that work and life balance. And also in changing COVID time, in the changing scenario with the COVID around, what changes have come into this life, which as it is the balance was difficult, and what new changes and challenges these COVID times have brought into us. Right, we start with what as per the initial, since I had done my MBA, there was this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we thought that that was sacrosanct. Like we start from physiological needs, and we lead to self-actualization in that order, and the involvement of personal happiness gradually increases to the top. From the down, it's physiological needs, then safety needs, then love and belongingness that you need, a team need where you need to feel important, cognitive needs, the aesthetic needs, and then you come to the self-actualization. Now, what happens in bureaucracy, as I see, different from other workplaces, either in corporate or in private sector, it is that every step of the way, there is a difference in the sense that physiological need, since government has assured some kind of a salary structure, so you don't need to go there. I mean, that becomes less important as against what initially it was thought to be the very important need. In safety needs in government, we are blessed with having a system of being heard. So before any action is taken against us, which normally may not happen in private sector. So now the point that I'll come straight to the point where we need to, what the worrisome part is the self-actualization. Self-actualization is very difficult in bureaucracy because number one, we may not get subjects of our choice, and our tenures are limited to 2 to 3 years. So a subject which I like very much, I want to do something better in it, but I am also constrained with the number of years, that time that I may have in it. So that makes another dimension to the self-actualization, where I would want to see that I may not get opportunity to work in this sector again. So I need to fit in that also. And then there is the extent of my work, our work. The span is so big, and enough is never enough. If we say that in a particular sector, we have covered all the people whom we needed to, it's not. It's a dynamic scene, and we have to reach out to people who are not even there on the radar. So you have to. The span of work is too much. We cannot define our achievement only in terms of figures, in terms of targets achieved. It's not that our targets are really cannot be laid down. So if one is involved in the work, then I feel that I can never have my targets in terms of numbers. That has to be. So I cannot derive satisfaction from there that, okay, there was a 10% increase in sales that I wanted to, and I've done it and I've got it to 15%. So I should be very happy about it. Here, if we cover X number of women or children in the present job of mine, then also I do not say that we can rest and say that, okay, this is enough. So it's all the time the work occupies your mind space. And there is, if you are a dedicated worker, then you have to find out a way in which you cannot be obsessed with your work, because ultimately one does have a family and they also have charge on your time and commitment. So how does one achieve or strike a balance between the two? That is very different from any other work that the women may be doing in corporate or private sector, or even as self-employed women. Then we, in government bureaucracy, my striking the balance between the work and life, I need to be, supposing I say I derive happiness from my work, from where else will I derive it? Then we do not have a choice of subjects. We are given what we need to do. And priorities have to be are decided mostly by the situation. Here today, if there's something that happens that comes up and we need to deal with it, then I may have decided on something today to do. And I would have felt very happy if I could do that. I could make a system or something, or maybe monitor something. And I would have been very happy in the end of the day that at least I know what is the extent of work that we have done in a particular sector that I was wanting to monitor. But there are situations which lay down the priority early in the morning when I come here. So now, either on how do I achieve my work satisfaction? One is that. This is very, very difficult to do, because when your priorities are from the situations and challenges, where extent of work you are not aware that it is enough, which cannot be expanded any further, and then you're happy that you've done it. So within that scenario, to be achieving self-actualization from the work is very difficult, but we need to do it. And now, with the COVID times, what has happened, in addition to what all the charges we had on our work and life balance time that we had, where I could feel a little more achieved and things, is that the charge on my time and my space, as they say, my space, where you could just go home and kind of listen to some good podcast or see a TV program or something, that is considerably reduced. Why? Because there are people who are not going out, children who are not going to school. They are there all the time. They have no charge on your time that you have on your time at home. Then there is technology is such that you're all the time connected. I remember when I'd gone to the USA for the very first time in 1996, and I was so amazed when I saw my sister. She was working in one of the private sectors there. And 5 o'clock on Friday, I mean, they were away in their own space till Monday, 9 o'clock. And here, that time, I think I was in transport or something. We had no Saturday, Sunday, really speaking. We were doing whatever was needed to be done whenever. So I was so amazed that, my God, 2 days, nobody disturbs you, no? You can go wherever you want. I was finding that very amazing, and I thought she was the happiest person there. But however, considering the opportunities that we get in bureaucracy, I think nobody can beat that, in the sense that itself is such a lot of self-actualization. So technologically now that in the COVID times, we are connected all the time to each other and also to our seniors and to the whichever sector of the government that we are dealing with. That charge has also come now. Earlier, if it was a physical meeting, it would normally end by 7 in the evening or maybe 7:30 in the evening. Now a Google Meet or a Zoom Meet can go on till whenever because you are there in your house. Nevertheless, my commitment to my family is there. My commitment to myself is there. I need to go for a walk. So those situations have really become increasingly difficult as far as COVID times is concerned. Then childcare has again the panel Dr. Vibhuti had also spoken about it. Childcare is in India even now is basically a domain. So when the child is at home and there is no school time, as they say, the child is there all the time. So her concern about the child welfare becomes even important because once the child goes to school, we were assured that he's in safe hands and the child is safe. And when he comes back, he'll have his homework to do. So to that extent, the involvement in child's development has now increased many folds. And we need to be all the time conscious that there's somebody looking after the child. Then now with schools happening online, the safety of internet use cannot be compromised with. That is another thing. You need to go back and see the history if the child is not clever enough to delete the history. So these are things that have emerged due to COVID. And they've occupied your personal and your workspace. And striking a balance becomes even more difficult in these times. And now when you're all the time available on technology in your office, I personally do not see that I have any time to, which I can say mine, I do not find that. I find that it is getting a little stressed and overworked situation. But I am not discounting it. Not everybody gets this opportunity to work at places where you can make a difference in the society and where you have so much of backing of the government and the wherewithal to deliver something for the benefit of the society. So those perks are there. So now my point is that here again is that self-actualization, where I was thinking that I would strike a balance between my work and whatever makes me happy, my personal space, my life. That space from my life has come more to my work. Now that my work has taken more, earlier it may have been 80-20, now I think it is 95-5. So in that context, I need to work my priorities differently. We need to work out our priorities. And I think now what I do, or maybe I'm striving to do, is to find satisfaction in my life, in my work. So I try to enjoy what I do. So in the sense that instead of getting self-actualization from watching Night Manager on Prime TV, I would want to make out a small paper or a policy or maybe a program we can think of where we can work for the betterment of the subjects that we are dealing with. So in that context, I think I would sum it up and say that work-life balance has become even more challenging for bureaucracy and very much more so during the COVID times. So with this, I think I now rest my case and I hope I'm able to convey something meaningful. Over to you, Rashmi.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, madam, for underscoring highly important points, related with number one, government and how government has, even greater accountability to be kind of a role model when it comes to setting up principles, ensuring that there is less disparity, the kind of disparities which otherwise we find, kind of more rampant in the private sector. So the government's role in the onus being there to be a role model. And number two, the point regarding the self-actualization, which is kind of so important to be also going beyond numbers, beyond targets, and which probably, so which probably it is the the women as professionals are more charged with, given the kind of emotional quotient, which women have, which traditionally has been thought to be, something which can be seen only in the personal domain, but the same attributes brought into the professional domains, when we are not just satisfied with the numbers, that we are looking at the outcomes, that if the children are being fed, is malnutrition going? So, we kind of like, the women's style in terms of getting more attached to, the aspects which again are not so simple in mathematical terms, but, which probably today arrive at like a much greater challenge, when we look at development sector indicators. So that is like a challenge which women face all the time, because they keep challenging themselves, to look at these very, very highly sensitive development issues. And you also underscored the role of technology, which in terms of opportunity is something which, probably like, globally, which is throwing like a lot more of opportunity. So, I mean, we thank you for these like highly, very important like dimensions. And with this, I would like to move on, to Dr. Saumya, who would bring in a perspective like more from the legal point of view, the legal perspective of work-life balance, which again like kind of brings us to the rights and entitlements aspect, which we as enablers, especially within the government, like need to be familiar with, and at the same time bring greater awareness amongst the employers, the private sector, to realize like the onus on them as well to enforce all the laws and the rules on the subject. So over to you, Dr. Saumya.
Thank you, Dr. Rashmi. There is an echo.
I think everyone will have to mute except for you.
Yes. I think it's, no, there's still an echo. Can the organizers please mute everyone else except me so that there's...
Now there is no echo.
Okay, fine. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Rashmi Singh, and thank you, Mr. Anvar Sadath, for this opportunity. And I'm very happy to be and honored to be part of this esteemed panel today, talking about a matter which is very, very close to my heart on this work-life balance. As Dr. Rashmi Singh said in her introductory comments, this is something that we all struggle with, we all grapple with as working women. But given the professions that we are involved in, it's not only about our struggles, but we are also looking at how to help others and how to reach out to others facing these kind of challenges in work-life balance, particularly that COVID context has thrown up to us. So I just want to draw upon Professor Vibhuti Patel's excellent introduction and laying down the context that she did. I just want to draw upon a few of the points that she said and link it to the legal perspective. Firstly, I think that achieving the perfect work-life balance is an unattainable myth. At least for me, I've found it to be unattainable. When I'm, especially when my children were small, when I was at work, I would feel guilty that I'm not giving them enough attention. When I'm with them, I would feel guilty that I'm not focusing enough on my work. So it's like you're torn between these two aspects all the time, and there was this sense of guilt. So I've never felt that I have achieved this excellent, ideal work-life balance. It's always been a struggle, and I think many panelists would also perhaps feel the same way. So it is because of the multiple roles that we play as women, multiple roles that we are expected to play given the patriarchal context, and we are expected to play the role of mothers, of wives, of caring for elderly and children and housework, and also because we choose to work, that becomes something that we have taken on, and we want to do our best in that as well. Now, COVID has actually exacerbated and exaggerated this tension which already existed within the domestic sphere between a working woman wanting to work and give her best at the workplace and wanting to live up to the expectations of her family members and play all that multiple gendered roles and responsibilities that she is expected to play. In terms of the legal perspective, I'm going to focus on three aspects. First is on domestic violence during COVID times and the challenges that it has brought, including but not only in terms of the law. Second is I want to focus a little bit on the workplace and job security related to that for women in COVID times. And thirdly, I want to talk a little bit about online sexual harassment at the workplace. So firstly, to start with domestic violence during COVID times, I think all of us know that there has been an enormous rise in complaints of domestic violence. The National Commission for Women, within a few months of the lockdown, I think by April, March was the lockdown. By April 2020, the National Commission for Women said that there was 100% increase in complaints of domestic violence. And the UN, of course, has called domestic violence a shadow pandemic. So, so this is something that we already probably know. And the National Commission for Women was compelled to announce mental health helplines, for specifically for domestic violence because of the enormous increase in domestic violence. Now, this, of course, is not a new phenomenon, because there have been other studies showing that whenever natural disasters happen, in the wake of natural disasters, there has always been an increase in domestic violence. And the reasons are many. There is a physical confinement within the home. There are economic disruptions. There's a slowed down business, possible unemployment or actual unemployment, scarcity of basic provisions, loss of income for the man in the house. And that's a very, very important factor, because that leads to economic insecurity, frustration. And who does he take out that frustration on? It is the women in the house. That has led to violence and increased violence and aggression. So there are other studies like Gerhardt in 2018, which have shown this very close association between natural disaster and increase in domestic violence rates. What we have also seen, and this is a global phenomenon, we have seen that during the pandemic, there was an increased sale of condoms, increased sale of sex toys, increased pornography usage, increased alcoholism, and all of this is also linked to increased sexual violence at home and increased domestic violence of all forms at home. Given this, what does it mean for a working woman? What is the value of employment and income, having an income source for the working woman? Firstly, it buffers them against domestic violence, because they are contributing to the financial well-being of the family, that indirectly would could bring down the domestic violence level. But more importantly, they are away from the house for 7 to 8 hours a day. They step out at 8 o'clock in the morning, they are back at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. For those many hours, they are out there in their workplace, interacting with others. So there is a social support network. Now, when working women face this pandemic, all of this was taken away from them. They could not step out of the house, which meant that for those women facing domestic violence, they were actually locked in with the perpetrator 24 hours a day. So what can that do? That means that they are vulnerable to domestic violence 24/7. At the same time, they are expected to be efficient workers at the workplace, and everything was online, everything was work from home. So along with domestic violence, along with domestic responsibilities, there were also these pressures from the workplace. So this is something that has thrown up a lot of legal challenges, because one is that unemployment for women or work from home for women means increased vulnerability to domestic violence. And in addition to that, because in the initial few months, and probably in places like Mumbai, where the pandemic has again increased, it's again this whole thing of, let's not have any workers come into the house, let's not have any helpers come into the house. So the house help is suspended. There is no cook coming in, which means that the working women are facing the pressure of that. And if they don't do that cooking or cleaning along with their work, their professional work, there is going to be increased domestic violence. So that is one aspect in terms of domestic violence. And I think the Domestic Violence Act, it focuses on sexual violence, physical violence, economic violence, and psychological or emotional violence. But law per se tends to focus much more on the physical and the tangible forms of violence and harassment. So anything, so how do you, in a pandemic situation where you can't reach the police station, where you can't physically go to an NGO or to WCD or to NCW or State Commission for Women or to a women's rights lawyer for help, then how do we deal with it? So this has been one challenge. Second challenge is related to harassment at the workplace, and there we find that it is not just about sexual harassment. I will deal very briefly with that, but it's also about increasing demands on working women to be computer savvy. And what happens to women who are not? What happens to women who are doing administrative work, clerical jobs, who may not be computer savvy? Then they are forced to go to work physically, which means they are forced to expose themselves and their families to the risk of a pandemic. And also, in terms of hire and fire, we know that women are last to be hired and the first to be fired. So when they are inefficient, and I'm putting this in inverted commas, inefficient at the workplace because of domestic violence or domestic responsibilities, they are the first to be fired. And labor lawyers are inundated with cases of unfair dismissals of women. So this is a second legal perspective. And I just want to give an example of primary school teachers, who are one of those categories who are facing the brunt of it, because working women sitting at home, middle class women who are working from home, they are not in a position to take care of their children. The creches are all closed. So they are putting pressure on the schools to conduct online classes for a longer period of time so that the children are kept occupied. So the middle class women are using, in a sense, the online classes as a way of creating some kind of a support for them for with childcare. But what is that? What is the impact of that on primary school teachers? They are being forced to conduct online classes for a longer period of time, no holidays, even Saturdays, full day classes. So like in the school in which my daughter is studying, I know that, and I'm talking about a situation in Haryana, and it's a private school, but I know that the teachers have been working round the clock for the entire 1 year, no holidays at all. So we as working women, as middle class working women, if we are not empathetic enough, then we are actually shifting the burden that we are shifting it on to other women who are even more vulnerable than us. And how fair is that? So that's just a question. And the third aspect is online sexual harassment at workplace. Sexual harassment traditionally has been understood to be in a physical workplace, and it at least involves physical touching or physical presence, even if not physical touch. But how do we understand sexual harassment at the workplace when the workplace itself is online? So we have so many situations of, late night WhatsApp chats, sending pornographic material and then saying, oh, sorry, I sent it to you by mistake. And so many such online forms of harassment. And one of the coping strategies that I find interesting is that working women are themselves pressurizing their employers to conduct sexual harassment at workplace related trainings. So I have been part of several trainings in the last 1 year, and one of the major aspects which employees keep throwing up is online sexual harassment. So employers have to understand that online sexual harassment is just as it has just as adverse an effect as in physical spaces, and the law also needs to recognize online sexual harassment in a much more holistic perspective given the pandemic situation. So I just want to conclude with a couple of things. One is that it's important for working women as a strategy. It's important for working women to be empathetic to other women, particularly women who are from weaker sections of society, women who are more vulnerable to losing their jobs, women who have lost their livelihood for several months, like the domestic workers. So there is a necessity to be empathetic to them, and like the primary school teachers. And secondly, I think it's important for all of us to know the law, know our rights, and to seek timely legal assistance and to help each other in seeking timely legal assistance. I want to end on a positive note, and also in terms of a personal note. What Madam Madhu Garg was speaking about self-actualization, I think an opportunity that the pandemic has given for so many working women, particularly middle-class working women, is to actually explore their own interests and hobbies. Many have taken to organic gardening and other things, including myself. So I think there are many challenges, but there are opportunities as well. So with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Saumya, for again, very interesting, points that you have made. And now I think the legal part, this is something borne by data, statistics, of National Commission for Women, which you talked about, has been concerning everyone a lot. And that too, in dimensions where it has looked at the private spaces, data coming from, say, domestic violence, sexual violence, in the domestic sphere. and the public spaces. And in the public spaces, also the workplace, and the kind of, the abuse which you've been talking about, like, are not typically the type that you would feel that it's probably, sexual harassment at workplace. And yet, as a duty of the employer to, have an enabling environment which is conducive for a working woman is the wider definition as per the Act, which at times we kind of overlook, because we are like, so focused on, just looking at violations, in something that we, kind of presume to be more tangible and physical in nature, that, we overlook these aspects. So I'm glad that you brought a very, very kind of wider definition of, looking at the labor laws, looking at the labor laws for the informal sector, how even the the teachers that are being kind of challenged, even though we feel that, well, working at home is easy, it's online, it's digital, you don't need to do much, and yet their own responsibilities, as a caregiver, and what it means for them to be putting in all these extra duty hours. So I think very, very important, again, points to be thrown in, and thank you. And now I would like to move on to Dr. Aparna, who'd be, bringing in another very important dimension. This is, with her expertise on stress and anger management, with the Center for Human Ecology, TIS, it's against something which kind of affects all of us, be it men or women, but it affects the women the more to be at the receiving end. So, over to you, Dr. Aparna.
Yeah, thank you so much for, first of all, inviting me. And I'm really very, very, considering myself to be fortunate to be a part of such a wonderful panel. I think each panelist who has spoken before me has churned out, has ignited some new process of thinking in my own head. So thank you so much for that. And the topic given to me is stress and anger. I wanted to subsume it under the larger umbrella of mental health and well-being instead of sticking out to two constructs called stress and anger. And I was just wondering, based on whatever other panelists have shared, what is it that I want to talk today, and on the basis of what am I going to talk? So I can throw numbers, I can throw statistics, but I thought that it might be a great idea to talk from maybe 2 or 3 points of view. One is I'm a psychologist by training, and I run this national level helpline called ICALL. And ICALL did tremendous work at the national level in addressing mental health impact of COVID pandemic. So I thought that I would talk on behalf of women callers who called us during these times. Yeah, that was one. The second one is I work with my own clients and I'm listening to their narratives. And the third one is my own narrative as a woman who was working during the pandemic. And these are the 3 points that I will keep in mind while definitely talking. Also, when I'm talking about the problems, I will also take care that I will also talk about some of the solutions that women have tried and have helped them during these times, because I just wanted to also, the topic that was given to us are also innovative techniques to address some of these work-life balance concerns. So I think the first thing that I want to talk about is, I think mental health, which was a very, very stigmatized topic. I mean, data tells us that 150 million people in this country are facing mental health issues, diagnosable mental health issues. You can think about many more who are not diagnosed. And to handle that, we have 9,000 psychiatrists, lesser number of psychologists, and even lesser number of psychiatric social workers. So mental health, just as violence was a shadow pandemic, was another pandemic that was also at the center stage when COVID was being conceptualized as a health issue or a development issue, right? So I'm first of all glad that mental health found some space for its own articulation during COVID. just wanted to tell you that a lot of times we equate mental health with mental illness, and I want to tell you all here that mental health is a continuum. And on one hand, you will have wellness. On the other hand, you will have illness. And somewhere in between lies stress. And all of us are capable of moving on this continuum based on the kind of triggers, stressors, as well as supports we have. To me, mental health is also a development issue, because it is, if we talk about poverty, poverty is very closely linked with mental health. If we talk about violence, it's very closely linked. If we talk about economic development, everything, mental health and development have a bi-directional relationship with each affecting. Yet, and all of us have mind, right? It's an abstract concept. Therefore, we don't know where to place it. Scientists tell us that it is in the brain. I don't agree with that. But we can experience mind. We can experience its presence. We can experience stress. So it is concerning all of us, and yet we don't talk about it because it's a stigmatized issue. Yeah. So therefore, I'm very glad that I get an opportunity to talk to all of you about this issue, which has, for the first time, affected each and every human being on this planet, and therefore we are talking about it during COVID times also. While it has been a very common stressor, each one of us has reacted and understood it in a very, very different way. Let me tell you women callers' experiences when they were calling us and what are the kind of issues that they were talking about. Yeah, I would like to put their issues in maybe 2-3 compartments: violence, violations, and stress. Yeah. As Saumya talked about, violence is very, very tangible, a lot of callers. And interestingly, during the first few months, it's the male callers who are calling us more than women callers. You can understand access to technology is household access and not individual access, and it's pretty gendered. And therefore, women's access to support system itself is pretty navigated through family and gendered and patriarchal structures. But what were women calling us for? Definitely for violence, yeah, which is clear, perhaps, understood definitions, but they were also calling us with several violations of their rights: their right to relax, their right to division of labor, their right to breathe, their right to have 5 minutes more of a bathing time, their right to, tell others that I want your help. Their right to be not superhuman beings. And there were several violations that women were. There is data to show during COVID times, even in India, our own data also shows family conflicts, not just violence, were hitting the roof, and women were one of the worst sufferers in that. And the third thing working women were telling us was stress that they were experiencing. Right, and this stress manifested through, I would say, 4 or 5 major compartments, and I'm talking about those so that all of us who are listening to this can identify, am I facing any of this? Because I want this session also to be tools for, moving towards that work-life balance, which, as Saumya said, is a perfect illusion, I would say, definitely. But definitely, I think self and self-care are very important constructs that we need to talk about. So 4 or 5 compartments in which women were talking about how stress manifested. The first one was a range of negative emotions. Yeah, for example, a tremendous amount of anxiety, worry, not just for themselves, for the loved ones. We all understand that women's sense of self is pretty relational in nature. So they were not just calling for themselves; they were calling for their children, elderly, maybe partners who had lost jobs. Children's careers were all in sort of uncertainties. So lots of negative emotions. Yeah, many were saying that while there are those emotions, anger also, and I feel that anger is one emotion which is unfortunately denied to women. It's traditionally been an emotion which belongs to men, and it is equated with the notion of masculinity also. So when women got angry within the domestic spaces, it was perceived to be somewhere a deviation also. And some women were also calling us saying, I can't feel anything. I'm feeling numb. I'm feeling bored. Yeah, so emotion was one compartment. The second one was thoughts, constant obsessions, constant thoughts of worry about future, all of that, or negative thoughts, catastrophization. What will happen? All worries which start with that kind of a question. The third way in which women were calling and telling us stress is manifesting is changed behaviors, excessive crying, not wanting to connect. See, initially there was this whole enthusiasm is if there is no social connection, we'll connect through Zoom, we will connect through technology. I think the earlier speakers have talked about how women find it very difficult to connect over technology. But there is a fatigue also of connecting through technology. So some are saying that there is isolation, I want to connect. Some are saying too much of exposure and I want some me time, space. Yeah, and therefore they were isolated, they were not talking to others, there was excessive crying also. Women were also telling us that I'm binge watching, I'm perhaps, using substances help me. This is now not coping, this is going beyond coping. The fourth compartment was body, very important, right? Lot of times data in developing countries shows that mental health does not manifest through mind, cognitions and emotions, but through body, somatic symptoms. So a lot of women were telling us about simple things, like not able to sleep, not able to eat, complete maybe panic attacks, hyperventilations. And the fifth area was interpersonal difficulties. So these were the several kind of issues with which women were calling us. Now, let me quickly, given the time, come to what could be the possible ways in which women could be helped during this also, right? I'm just going to throw a few ideas and see what feels helpful to whom, right? First of all, I think understanding work-life balance also requires charting of my multiple roles, and many of those roles in women's lives are invisible roles. For example, domestic work itself is unstructured, invisible, unvalued, unpaid. Right? Emotional labor, a concept which perhaps came in 80s, right? That the idea that I have to coordinate, I have to nurture, I have to remember who is experiencing what emotions, I have to bring difficult topics for conversations, I have to maintain social relationships. What are the different roles that I'm playing? Somebody needs to, at the end of the day, sit and chart, and then you will understand what myth is this work-life balance for women. The second thing is, most of the time when you are taking decisions of work-life balance, they are guided by the logic of urgency rather than guided by the logic of what I want, right? Whatever comes forth, I just try to respond that, right? But there is no thoughtful reacting. So I think COVID also gave us some opportunity to slow down, at least on some days, and to understand that am I reacting or am I responding also, and what are my needs, what is happening to that. The third thing is, there is a wonderful psychologist who talked, Winnicott, who gave a concept of good enough mother. There is a huge mother blaming in mental health and psychology. And he said all that we require is good enough mother, letting go of that perfect mother fantasy. So I think what is a good enough worker image in our own mind also, and all that we can do is being a good enough worker, right? And I think coming to terms with that was also very, very important. Assertive communication. I think I'm going to talk about 3 quick ways in which we helped women deal with this work-life balance and the host of stressors and impacts that they were talking about. One is the path of self-care. But self-care also sometimes puts the responsibility of violations also onto women. Like I'm violated, I have to fix my own care also. So self-care, important because it's within my control to some extent. For example, we started telling women that spend 5 more minutes because of the very things that you can't access external support systems, you can't go to police. Spend more minutes, in bathroom. Listen to the music that you like, or whatever small spaces you can find, just make use of those. So engaging in self-care is one way. Yeah, and there are a few quick tips. One is, at the end of the day, I need to ask myself, what am I doing to nurture my own body, right? And it doesn't have to be exercise. People say, but I can't exercise. I have had so many calls. I said, movement is better than exercise. Am I moving somewhere, physically at the end of the day? And have I done 3 things that my body likes? Have I worn clothes that I like? Have I eaten something that I like? Which is very simple but difficult to negotiate in a gendered arranged space, right? Have I listened to a good music? We also told women a simple technique which is known as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, right? Whenever you're feeling extremely overwhelmed, almost immobilized, by emotions, by stress, you do this what we call as grounding techniques. You can definitely, Google also, but this is simple technique. The 5 things that I just need to sit down in a chair. I need to take 3 deep breaths. If time would have permitted, I would have done this with all of you. And notice the 5 things that I see. Notice 4 things that I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 1 thing I can smell, and 1 thing I can touch. This immediately brings anxiety down and brings you into this space. There are several grounding techniques, such as a safe space technique. Some of these are visualization based techniques, and we were telling women to do that. Second thing, self-care, self-compassion, self-affirmations. At the end of the day, saying things which are good about myself. Appreciation is very hard to come at work, family, and other interpersonal spaces. So I have to appreciate myself, and I have to negotiate also for appreciation from others. But what are the simple things? For example, I accept myself as I am good enough, I'm worthy of love and compassion. Some of these. We used to tell women to maintain a gratitude journal. What are the 3 things at the end of the day that I'm grateful for? That I'm alive, I had food. Whatever are the 3 things that you are grateful for? Identify things which are within your control and do not blame yourself for things which are not within your control. Manage your inflow of technology. And some of the last things that I definitely want to talk about is, while we are talking about self-care, I also want to say that self-care alone is definitely not going to help us. 2 last things, and I will end here. Support is extremely important, right? The previous speakers were also talking about, because we found that women are not a homogeneous mass. Women who were calling us, some were far more structurally oppressed. There were women who did not identify as straight, who did not identify themselves within gender binary. There were women from different socioeconomic strata also. So I think support is extremely important. Asking for support as a right and giving support as your kindness gesture, both are extremely important. And I see there organizations also have a huge responsibility. It can't be workers taking care of their own mental health. What are you doing during COVID? I can't tell you how many workshops I got invited for in order to talk about well-being, and how organizations can structurally institutionalize some of these mechanisms which have started during COVID, so that it's not one of those events. What are you doing in terms of team building? What are you doing in taking care of? Are there calls going from superiors to other people asking, hey, how was your day? I can't tell you what a magical question that is. Yeah, and it's economically also increasing your productivity, if that's the logic, right? So keeping all of this in mind, just to summarize, I talked about the kind of stressors that women are experiencing, but there is still space to maneuver at self, at interpersonal, and at organizational level. And let me just conclude on this positive note, that the dialogue around mental health and well-being that has started on a positive note has actually brought the issue of mental health from the shadowland of stigma into a much more positive space. So I hope that we keep going on with the momentum. In case any one of you are facing any kind of distress, please feel free to call ICALL. It's a free service. It's run by professionals. It's multilingual service, and it's a psychosocial service. If you don't want to talk to us, you can email us. It's completely confidential and it's completely anonymous. You can call as many times for as long as you want, for as many issues as you want, and be assured that we will be there for you. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity, and I'm hoping that the dialogue continues hereafter.
So, Dr. Aparna, I'm kind of rendered speechless right now. Actually, I am, because, it's been so relevant to hear what you said, and I'm sure that all the listeners, and I'm, extremely grateful from the entire team which is listening, because it probably helps everybody at an individual level. Here I was like talking about like policies and, how we are going to implement things at the workspace, in terms of enforcement, say, of laws and other areas that we're looking at. But what you just said, I think every woman who was connected to you would have felt somewhere to have personally benefited a lot. So, I'm not going to attempt to even summarize what you said. Yeah, it was so interesting. Yeah. And after Dr. Aparna, now the last speaker of the day, Dr. Nina Pandey, who's again an educator, a social worker, and teaching at the Delhi School of Social Work. And recently she brought a very interesting book, that I had the opportunity to get associated with, which is like, talking about like stories of survivors of violence, and 150 of them based on a doctoral thesis. So, which was released by the Delhi School of Social Work, and she being a part of the NAPSWI, that's an association of professional social workers. So, I think it would be really kind of contemporary, to get insights of, your academic work, into what we are talking about, as a concluding panelist of the day. So over to you,
yeah.
Dr. Neena.
Yeah, thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Rashmi ji, for creating this empathetic environment. I would say your initiative on the most relevant thing, something which all the working women have tested and applied and experienced and dealing with that, and all the panelists and Aparna ji. As I have been given the topic on role of CBOs and CSOs in creating work-life balance, and your ICALL is the is the beginning of this theme which I am supposed to deliberate upon. But yes, as Rashmi ji talked about the book which has come, that was on voices of survivors, and I feel certainly that women voices will have to come out now. The voices, let's talk it out. Let's talk about those voices, because a constant organized pressure or efforts have been taken up to suppress those voices. Right now, and we know any crisis when it happens, any disaster when it's happening, women, it affects gender wise, and the effect of those crises is manifold, as we have seen. We have gone through that. So now when we talk about role of CBOs and CSOs, I'll have to deal upon the possibilities, empathizing with the situation, what has happened, and being realistic is one thing. I think biggest role which the CBOs or civil societies or ICALL kind of efforts can, make is realistic about what's existing, and this is the reality. So I think for the civil society organizations, your job is becoming little, just giving you a kind of comfort zone, because this corona pandemic has also brought out the realities of our lives. How do we perceive our homes? How do we perceive the relationships in marriage or intimate relationships? How do we perceive, family as an institution? All this the pandemic has given us an opportunity to basically rethink about these institutions and negotiate violence-free life, peaceful life, and rights-based life. The perspective which I am looking at for role of CBOs is that how do we look at it? Work-life balance. This is a buzzword, I would say, of our generation. I would say from last 10, 12 years. The work-life balance. People are talking about. But if you ask me about the civil society roles and realities, I would say, how do I look at it? Should I look at it, the work, the life, and the balance, right? So the perspective which I would look into it is that we will have to bring life to our work. And the responsibility, if I say the responsibility of CSOs is more on bringing life to whatever I do. As you said, that we'll have to sort out, we'll have to map things, there are multifarious role, multi-dimensional roles, but it's so very important to write that journal. We'll have to edit our journal of roles, that what is it which is coming in my priority or something. So let's think about, the things which are possible and how can we bring life to those work or my living is something which is so very important, comes in balance. Under the role, I would say that it is subjective, family to family, women to women, work to work, it differs. And I tell you, when Corona, the first word which came into that we'll have to save ourselves, prevent ourselves with coronavirus is social distancing. And I'm sure you will be on board empathetically that it never suited us, social distancing. So we reworded it that it is physical distancing. And as you know that the recent, the Congress which is happening of National Association of Professional Social Workers is that very thoughtfully they have brought this term, it is dedicated to social cohesion and collective responsibility. So now the what if I squeeze down, time is so less, but I'll talk about working women's problem in general. So it is the answer lies in collective responsibility and social cohesion, and how it has to be done. What has happened, as Saumya talked about different kind of abuses, what has happened, and Aparna coming in, talking about stress and all. There is a space for the CBOs to fit in between the two and bring in action into execution. There I see there is a role where who will bring in social cohesion? The organizations, like they'll have to structure social cohesion and bring in those collective responsibility. So I find it as first of the roles which CBOs will have to play is, and they have played, we have seen during Corona times, as facilitators. What has happened when lockdown was announced? Ration and all, we have seen the way CBOs, they involved themselves into food distribution, and the way the collection was happening, and it was streamlining the entire CSOs with the government organizations, with police, with other stakeholders, trying to reach out to people with ration, food distribution. That is one thing. I'll give you one example of, as we know that Madhu Ji talked about American, work-life professional. She talked about the professional ethics which was happening in America, that there was no disturbance during Saturdays and Sundays. And if you ask me as an academician, I myself has imbibed this value that since I'm not able to see the students offline, so it's like somewhere I had to say this to myself, that these are students, they are there for 2 years for training, professional training program, who will get into the action. So somewhere that preparedness I gave to myself, that now it is a 24/7 job. So I have to live with that, and whether it is 11, the individual conferences are going on, whether it is 10, making the other person also, understand that since there is no classroom teaching, classroom teaching it's going online, but then when they face any problem, we are available as teachers, we are available. So a lot of mental health issues are there with the youngsters also, who are not attending to the classes and all. That has to be somewhere we have to sit together and work on that. One wonderful example I will give you. As we know that as this country compared to other countries, we are lack of resources and overpopulated, you see. So we'll have the CBO's role becomes as facilitators more so important. And I'll give you one example of Bihar, because when online thing came up, so here was this organization which started working in Bihar with marginalized group. So what did they do to make it is also like somebody said about that home schooling, as Dr. Patel talked about that, mothers have a role to play, women have to play a role in homeschooling also. So this organization, what they did, they created a lane-wise, audio speakers, and the CBOs, the CSO, the civil society organization, started the class, through that speaker, and it was being the audio was going to every house and the child was studying. So the impact of that, we had this person for our orientation program in Delhi School of Social Work, and he said the impact of this initiative was manifold, because it was stated that this is the time, from 9 to 12 or 9 to 11, there will be classes for the young children. So entire community got involved into this, that education of children is so very important, and then this is the time we don't have to disturb the children and they should be in time. So that took care of all irregularities which were happening. So I think that is a role of civil society organization can play. Secondly, role of educators' role. Work-life balance, there has been, number of researchers. Otherwise, also we were talking about, if you ask about my own research, which is on atrocities on women and role of police, I have talked about community watch model. It is so, since we know it is domestic violence is not a private affair, we are advocating this thing, and it's so very important that think about those women, those situations, those children who, when lockdown happened, that you have to stay at home. What if the home is so vulnerable? The most unsafest place was home for that person, So I think this is the time when we have come to know that violence has gone, four folds, many folds, multiple folds. Marital rape has taken place. I find this platform, for advocating that it's high time that we understand that homes are not functioning as they are supposed to be, because it is the homes which has shown us, this corona pandemic has shown us the mirror, that homes have not been homes as it's supposed to be. So what has to be done? The marital rape kind of thing, which now we should acknowledge this as, that there exists rape within the intimate relationship, and that has to be advocated. That there, I find there is a role of CSOs. And if you see the, I'll share one research by, it happened in US, and there is another one in India, that they said that because of the work-life imbalance, that $125 billion to $190 approximately is being spent on healthcare. So what if we understand the managing, or if we have those soft skills of maintaining the self-care or learning the self-care and management, I think this expenditure will be. So instead, what are we aware? The point of making this, the idea of making this point is basically, what are we earning for? We'll have to also critically analyze money earned and money saved phenomena. That money earned and money saved matrix. If I am earning hell lot of thing and I'm putting all my, thing, I'm taking this project also, that project also, and at the end of the day, the earned money is going into my health care. So we'll also have to be, little realistic about the money earned and money saved matrix, which can be somehow the CSOs can educate, can give this awareness within the community and collectives. If you see, there is a if you are interested, I will talk about as already, the work which was going on, and I hope that something which we will also, as parents, as mothers, that superhuman mother, that attribute, we'll have to be realistic. Since I am working woman also, I am wife also, I am mother also. So I'll have to be, and the organizations can facilitate such researches to me, because already you see work-life imbalance research has talked about 4 generations. Phase 1, if you have, I think you are well aware about, baby boomers generation, then Gen X generation, then millennial generation, and then Generation Z. And we are, if you see, the corona has opened the Pandora's box, if I say, with the Generation X, because what has happened, friends, we have been exposed also. See, the corona pandemic has established the fact before the children that parents are contradictory, because to maintain the life skill thing, we have always, you see, if you talk about Xenex, I mean the third generation, our past generation, the family time has been replaced by internet, mobile phones, and all these things. So communication is not, it's not happening. And this corona period has reinforced this, because till yesterday we were saying to all our little children that you don't have to sit before the gadget, not before the TV and all. And today we have you just go and see the data, the kind of mobile phones, number of mobile phones and laptops purchased from the market. It's huge. So that is something, and the children we have given replacement of ours. So that is one thing which we'll have to realize that this is the reality, and we'll have to work with that. Third thing which I will talk about is, and definitely as you see that the home thing, which I really want to reinforce, that home has become the most rearing space for violence. All the theories of gender-based violence, whether it is, it is giving space to victim blaming, it is giving space to, learned violence is learned. The children are, yesterday children were going to the school, and where violence was happening, there were, families where violence was happening, but not in front of children. There are layers of violence. But, now through this pandemic, the relationships are exposed, the identities are exposed. So somewhere, we'll have to build on safety issues. So,
I would like to request you will have to conclude, because we have one more speaker. Preeti ji is there. Thank you.
Okay. But I'll focus upon two things only, and then I'll wind up. And that is, you see, let's not talk about on the binaries of personal and professionals. The profession has already entered into the personal domain, and personal has already. I am the same person when I'm going to university, and when I come back, I'm the same person. So the whole, understanding of personal and professional needs attention, needs discourses, which can be facilitated as it is being facilitated right now, and which can be integrated through, the role of CSOs. And there is a huge range of skill building which has to be taken care, which can be, structured by the CSOs, because it's so very important. There was a shair, who said that kuch ishq kiya, kuch kaam kiya. हाँ, कभी इश्क काम में आता था और कभी काम इश्क में आता था, और क्या था उसमें, आखिर दोनों से तंग होकर हम वो दोनों को छोड़ दिया, इश्क भी छोड़ दिया और काम भी छोड़ दिया. We don't have that choice in our life. We have to take the personal and professional together. I think for that, lot many soft skill training can be, gender constructions and gender sensitivity training programs, and communication within the family relationships is something. How to communicate with our own children in family relationships and our neighborhood are certain things, I think, which the organization can play a major role. So thank you so much. Over to you, Rashmi ji. Thank you.
Thank you. I know how difficult it is to contain, when you have so many ideas coming from the heart. The thoughts coming from the heart, but do appreciate the fact that you have brought in the role, especially of the CSOs, in terms of the kind of understanding, which comes only from empathy. So, that's something which truly the flexibility, the adaptation, which is required, especially in times like these. So, do appreciate, the other points regarding social cohesion, brought in, the role of the family, the relationship management and all. Now, last but not the least, the speaker that I would like to now invite is the chair of FICCI's Diversity and Inclusion Working Group on Gender Parity. And also has been the global head for the TCS. Now, like looking at sustainable culture of leadership and diversity. So Ms. Preeti Demelo, to speak on a very important topic again, like, how the corporate world, which is looking at efficiency, more and more efficiency. And yet, when it comes to women who are trying to break the glass ceiling, how does this work-life balance figure in there? So over to you, Preeti ji.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you very much. Well, I think everybody's already spoken to the fact that work-life balance is a misnomer. It's a false idea. It does, however, trigger thoughts and conversations like this one about exploring what is the place of work in our life, and to the idea of greater productivity, efficiency, impact of the workplace. What does it really mean? Now, we have addressed that this state of equilibrium, where we equally prioritize the demand of our careers and the demand for our personal life, is a tricky one. It's not possible. It is, however, pertinent for us to attend to what we call time balance, which refers to time being given both to work and non-work roles, and the involvement balance, which is attention to the levels of psychological involvement that we have with both. And I think Aparna did a wonderful job in speaking to what happens there and what is pressure due to us. So in my world, I would see this as both time and energy, and it's not about equal or balance. My own career, which is about 30 years, work has always been an integral part of me. And inversely, life has integrated my work as an imperative part of the life dynamic, which basically means that it's a messy coming together of life and work. And as a woman, I have an additional dimension, which is along with the plethora of responsibilities that a woman has, which is her own nuclear home system as well as beyond, work becomes another dimension, and sometimes possibly the most important dimension. So COVID, which actually is this, in a sense, of adventure or crisis, gets us to pause and reevaluate and say what's really going on. And this critical dimension has another aspect to it, and that is that it's constantly evolving. It's not a static dimension. You can't take it and say, all right, now I get it and I'm going to work with it. It constantly emerges, and there's a whole new phenomenon every other day. And thus, striking a work-life balance, or as I prefer to call it, integration, is a difficult challenge, even in the best of times. So in times of uncertainty, it becomes even more challenging. And the pandemic, with its subsequent side effects that all of us have addressed, including Rashmi has spoken to it, has left many of us putting in longer hours, working harder. The shadow pandemic, which has its reasons but no rationale. Women are under greater pressure at home, and now, in addition, has brought work to the home as well. So this crowded space has become even tighter, left women feeling isolated, loss of social contact, enhanced vulnerabilities, and created some rather unreal expectations which are not possible. So the question that comes up in that case is, whose responsibility is it to sort this out? Now, my belief is that we women have to step up and ask for what we want. But at the same time, I would also say it's an equal responsibility of the employer. And most conversations relating to work-life balance happen at the individual level. And employers find out about it later, when burnout starts to happen, when pressure starts to happen. There's no preemptive effort. So as an employer, any organization, mine and others, have as much responsibility to encourage a healthy balance within the work-life integration space, specifically for women employees, as well as others. Now, the fact remains that intersectionality of women's life is at the heart of work-life balance and integration. So at the workplace, she brings her work home with her, and vice versa. And there are numerous studies, to the point that Rashmi said, where what you do when there's such high expectation, numerous studies that show that most productive employees are well-rounded professionals who have full and integrated lives in the workplace and outside. Likewise, the most successful companies are those that foster employee health and well-being while enhancing organizational performance and productivity. One without the other is not a feasible option. It doesn't happen. So today, work-life integration ranks as one of the most important workplace attributes. I know in my own organization it is. And it's second only to compensation. And individuals who feel that they have a better work-life balance tend to be, they say, up to 60% more productive, and thus have the ability to work harder and focus more on work. But there are some steps to this work-life integration, which I'm going to quickly run through in the interest of time, given that we have only 15 minutes for the session. So one is this division between personal and professional, which is totally dissolved. And we have to find sustainable ways that keep our energy flowing, our minds and bodies healthy, our whole self happy and content. It means giving due attention to everything that makes us feel better. Be it work or career, be it health or fitness, be it our relationships and family, be it spirituality, be it community, be it hobbies and passions, be it intellectual stimulation, be it rest and recreation, time for self. And thus, how do we bring it all together when on one level we are saying we are a patriarchal country, on the other level we are saying that there is a potential clash of culture within our family systems. So the patriarchy shows up. So I have just a quick, I won't say it's a formula because there is no science to this, but some aspects that I look at for myself. One is track your time. Analyze your present situation in the beginning itself, wherever you, and beginning can be whenever you're ready. In what is it that you are, how are you spending your time? And how much of your time results in generating some sort of capital, which could be productivity, money, revenue, well-being, and how much of your utilized time makes you feel that your contribution has no acknowledgement, no recognition, no respect. Because somehow I believe that it is true that when you step into your power, or when I step into my power, or we step into our power, it also allows others to see it. And I think somewhere we haven't addressed this enough. The second point I'd make is determine your priorities. So spending some time seriously reflecting on what is most important to you. What is it that you want from your home ecosystem, from your work ecosystem, with the awareness that there is no perfect balance. Developing a common understanding on this is important with whoever your partners or your stakeholders in the system, so that when you invest, your priorities, your goals, your contribution counts and sticks. Which leads to the third point, which is set specific goals. Now, setting specific goals is it's been spoken of all the time, just before appraisals, evaluations, so on and so forth. But the fact is that when you have individual priorities, you'll be able to turn them into concrete goals. And we are aware that life is packed with paradoxes. You want this and you want that. But a system, be it a family system or another, which has common articulated goals, common language around what we want to create, be it with your family members, your spouse, your team, your supervisors, allows us to deliver as promised and with clarity. For me, the fourth point is extremely important. I schedule scrupulously. I cannot manage without my calendar. And I realize that my calendar is what creates the fifth point for me, which is establishing boundaries and realistic limits to what I can do and what not. And there's clear communication around this with whoever's involved. Taking care of our health, be it our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, is undoubtedly one of them, possibly the first priority for me. And if we are not in good shape as women, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, our work-life balance not only will suffer, but it's really out of the window. Now, we spend a lot of our times, which is point 7, on nurturing our family and our relationships. But the point is, can we also recognize that this is not the sole responsibility of women? To Aparna's point, a good enough mother is also good enough wife, and a good enough contributor, a good enough responsible person. Can we evaluate that? Point 8, make time for yourself. As much as work, health, relationships have priority, you need to have uninterrupted you time, me time. Without that, we women will not be able to make this movement into greater integration. I have this policy around leaving work at work. And I don't have it the other way around. I can't leave home at home, but I do leave work at work, which is to say I hang my hat, I hang my coat. But when I shut down, I really do shut down. Be it a weekend, be it an evening time. Does it mean I'm not contactable? I am. But mentally and energetically, learning how to switch off is important so that we are not constantly transiting between these two realms of work and home. And allow yourself to exercise your options, be it on flexi time or telecommuting or how to compress a work week or job sharing or even part-time employment or flexible hours. You will find that these arrangements will not only make you more productive, but also help cut stress and free up very, very valuable time. We are living in an age where working smarter, not harder, is of consequence. And finally, to that point, I would say if you don't ask for help, you are not, and I am not, as a woman, not really coming into a place of any great power. There is this superwoman image that we believe that we must be recognized as that. And it's an untenable work situation. It's an untenable home situation. It needs assertiveness, it needs participation, it needs voice. So while balanced life continues to elude us, we manage to go through this walk of life without asking for help. It does not support us. And I noticed runs this great program. There are others as well. I think taking up employee assistance programs or going to a mental health worker should be a part of the game. So try as we may, work-life balance is not a science. It's an art. And each person must find their own way of combining career, relationships, personal care into an integrated whole, with the understanding that it's a messy integrated whole. And what is right for you will likely change as circumstances alter. So you have to periodically review your decisions and then adjust accordingly. If you look at the whole system and look at it as a countrywide issue and say this is happening not only within our country but outside of it as well, we also know that it is important for us to make a beginning. And that beginning is to really clearly articulate that you want it. My question to most women is, do we even talk to ourselves about what work-life integration or balance for that matter might look like? Or do we actually say it's not working? So, to wrap up, I'd say that this is a situation that can be managed, but that calls for your own personal power in the game, and which is what I'd say to all women within my organization and outside. Over to you, Rashmi.
Thanks a lot, Preeti ji, for giving something, something which affects all of us. So, when you were talking, it was again, a reflecting time for all of us. And because of a shortage of time, I would just not go into it, but the balance, which you've talked about, I think, that's kind of a huge takeaway for everyone, listening to you. And, because we had posed some questions and there was on the chat box, I can see that, there are 3-4, which I'm just going to read. And, from Ragini Raj, it was said that a group of psychologists, so basically they're wanting to know about the provision of community counseling in detail and how to break the chain of supermom syndrome. Anupriti Chatterjee has said. And then Ragini ji, to me, has said the role of NGOs in counseling nutrition camps. And then there's a question from Savita, how to manage children who have become lethargic and arrogant due to closure of schools. And there are 2 raise of hands, that's Lata Negi and Shuchi Sehgal. So should we quickly first take the raise of hand and then giving time for others to reflect on the questions which I have just read out before we wrap up. So Lata Negi, can we have your question? Okay, so then I will not wait. Is Shuchi Sehgal there? No, okay, then you can maybe, give it on the chat box. So can I have the responses now? So in terms of the responses, first is knowing about community counseling and supermom syndrome. Can we have that, please, from, I think our expert, panelist on the counseling side?
Thank you so much for that question. I mean, I think to me that question signifies want to change the situation, to do something about it. I'm not so sure what the person meant when the person talked about community counseling, but I assume that some sort of a support system which is available at the community level, at a mass level, is what the person was perhaps talking about. And super mom syndrome is, anyway, it's not a documented one, but definitely I think it is a part of all of us. And I just also want to say that we are not the creators of it. It's the larger dominant scripts in the society which are creators of that. Given a choice, I don't want to be a super mom at all. So anyway, I think what I would suggest, in the interest of time, that if you are really interested in knowing more about such services, counseling services, or initiating one in your community, maybe you can write to ICALL. I will put my email ID in the chat, and then we can take the conversation forward so that we can have time for other questions.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And I would also like to, give the floor to Vibhuti Patel ji for her interjection. And before that, I'll quickly respond to the role of NGOs in counseling nutrition camps, because that was addressed to me. So there, I think, see, what's important in my view is that we probably have less counselors, but we have everybody who have a potential to be turned into a counselor. That is with like a whole lot of sensitization workshops, which can bring out the counselor in us. All the people who are caregivers in the government run homes, or managing any schemes and programs of the government or in the private sector. So I think more and more of counseling skill, because people are wanting to talk, but others have to be ready to listen and to give empathy in what they, and without a judgmental value to it. So I think that's what basically some of the essence in my view would be. And nutrition, of course, because we're talking about healthy well-being, and there, nutrition is not just nourishment coming from food, but it's also what you breathe, how much outdoor activities. So nutrition is all about, again, that probably the balance between air, water, food. So over to you, Vibhuti ji.
Yeah. So I think I also join my colleagues where the action item for any healthy work life depends on the personal situation, context, and also the personal preferences, what kind of hobbies and self-actualization activities that you would like. But I think it's very important, as I think speakers after speakers, all panelists said, that we need to acknowledge our feeling, positive, negative, neutral, and they all are valid, and no, the guilt trip, I think that has to go. Then also that whole supermom syndrome, or the perfection that we all strive at, and most of us become workaholic and striving for perfection. I think there also we should be more generous with ourselves, and also practice self-compassion, that I made a mistake, but I am a human. Making mistake is okay, and I will improve. So that kind of approach is very important. Self-care has been emphasized by, I think, 3 panelists, and I think it's very important that establishing boundaries so that we cannot take extra burden, then prioritizing the relaxation and self-care activities, taking care of one's health and other people's health, talking about any stress that we are facing, as Dr. Aparna Joshi also told us, participate in teletherapy. I think throughout the 40 years of women's movement, when all of us, because of the consciousness raising exercise, creation of a non-threatening environment where you can freely talk about your innermost feelings, whether it's your phobia or anxiety or strength or weakness, without being judged or without being run down, or someone using your personal information just to damage you. That kind of a situation, avoiding that and creating that kind of a consciousness raising group is also very important. And that's how globally, as well as in India, the women's movement grew. All of us had been in a mental asylum had we not have such kind of a non-threatening democratic spaces within the women's movement. Like I entered women's movement in 1972 as a college girl, and now also I am still positive and able to be get into social solidarity because of this kind of a positive vibes that we got. So creation of a structured and flexible schedule in personal life, establishing dedicated space for play activity or leisure time activity along with the workspace, and also simplifying our tasks. What are the creating the priority list? I think that's very important. What is my highest priority and where I need flexibility, and taking help of other, delegating some tasks. I think that also many speakers have said. And also staying connected under this situation of lockdown through social media, because that is also making us very, and this kind of attending webinars, attending the important training programs online, I think that is very important in current context. And also have a weekly check-in meetings with the friends and family members. That is very important. Children are also like creating a structured, flexible schedule for children. We all have raised our children, and we know that how it becomes very important to structure and systematize organize our time. And also we're dividing our personal 24 hours into personal time, care time, and the time, professional time. I think that is very important. And I think the time utilization study of Ministry of Statistics, and they have also used the same method. So it is very important that whole jigsaw puzzle of work-life balance or the work-family balance, I think that we can collectively, using our collective wisdom, and so many learnings we got in today's session. I think I find it personally also, I find the session extremely educative, because we have all of us put our brain together, and we also came from different disciplines, right, from social work and psychology and law and social science and administration management. So I think that is a very important insight that we have got, and I thank the organizer for choosing such an important topic of the 21st century, where women are entering every walks of economy and every sector of the economy and every walks of it. Thank you, madam.
Yeah, so thank you, Vibhuti ji. And I think you've also, touched upon like the management of children, like the question which was asked. And I will not go into, some of the others which I just saw on the screen, because I think by and large, the areas have been addressed. But I do feel that now is the time to conclude with some promises, some commitments. And the best way to thank all of you, probably would come with a commitment that we on our part, would try and bring a synthesis of whatever has been deliberated today. If like all of you are okay, in terms of creating a documentation, of like all the takeaways, and like, building some kind of a framework in which like the actionable points which emerge from today's discussion. So maybe we can create some kind of a group to take forward that, those action points. Because I think in Delhi, if we take the lead in these, at a time when very clearly there are new kinds of demands thrown in, challenges thrown in, and opportunities also looming in front of us. So if we build this, into that framework where there are, definitely like at an individual, besides the individual level, I think that there are like, very important key policy, kind of insights which we can draw from today's deliberations. So is it okay that we work on those lines?
Yeah, we support.
Okay, thank you. And we would really need the support of all of you. Yeah, that would be really nice. So besides like, the social media platform, like, I mean, something serious, if we can look at in terms of, building that document. So I think that kind of leaves an important work for our SRCW, the State Resource Center for Women, which is like, something now. Acha, Lata has a question. My submission is, all being a women empowerment, Lata, would you like to, quickly, I can't see you. So can we have your question again? You had some question there, which I can't really see on the screen. But maybe, then we can have a... Yeah. Just go on before we...
Just मैं यही कहना चाह रही हूँ कि आप सब जैसे पैनलिस्ट हैं मैम, और आप बीइंग HOD, और जैसे विमेन का जो वर्किंग वुमेन की जो स्ट्रेसेस है, वो हमेशा से मल्टीफेरस रोल्स को लेके रहता ही है, और कोविड पीरियड में ये बहुत ज्यादा मल्टीप्लाई हुआ। तो ऐसे स्थिति में छोटी छोटी चीजें भी कई बार विमेन की स्ट्रेस को रिड्यूस करता है। तो हम लोग अगर किसी पोजीशन में हैं तो हम उनको थोड़ा सा हैंड होल्डिंग करें। कई बार सिर्फ एक शब्द आपका एप्रिसिएशन भी उसके स्ट्रेस को रिड्यूस करता है। तो इस तरह की छोटी छोटी जो टेक्निक भी अगर हम खुद अपने यहाँ से शुरू करें, मतलब जो भी आज पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं वो किसी न किसी पोजीशन में है, किसी को फीमेल कोलीग्स हैं उनके, है ना, तो वही एक सब हम अपने आपस में भी एक दूसरे को एक हैंड होल्डिंग या एप्रिसिएशन के थ्रू इनको लेके चलेंगे तो कहीं ना कहीं वो बैलेंस जो है उसमें हेल्प उनको मिलता है। एक एग्जांपल देती हूँ मैम, कोविड पीरियड में मेरी ब्रांच पूरी चली है, तो मैं खुद एक महिला हूँ, मेरे साथ में ब्रांच वाले भी महिलाएं हैं, तो फैमिली का प्रेशर, ऑफिस का प्रेशर, सारी चीजें, तो द वे आई मतलब टेक देम विद मी, मतलब हैंड होल्डिंग करना, मतलब उनको अप्रिशिएट करके किसी तरह से मतलब पैम्पर करके ऐसे करके हम लोगों ने ये सारी सिचुएशन जो है उस स्ट्रेस को हमने बांट के लेके मतलब काम को किया है। तो ये कुछ टेक्निक इस तरह के भी हैं जो हम इन हाउस भी हम solve कर सकते हैं। मेरा ये
perfect, perfect. So Lata, who's also like,
madam, excuse me, madam. Madam. I'm Dr. Pratibha Desai, ma'am, from Shivaji University, ma'am. Just I want to know that for work-life balance, the family members' role is very important. Ma'am, is there any initiatives to cope up with family members? Until and unless the family members may not be support, the woman can't be balance herself work and
so now what we can do, we have an offer from the ICALL also, which like kind of you can have the dialogue, and Dr. Aparna Joshi, she has offered that आगे भी इस चर्चा को यदि पर्सनल लेवल पे इस संवाद को आपको आगे रखना है, वो फैमिली मेंबर्स के पर्सपेक्टिव में, वो वर्क प्लेस के पर्सपेक्टिव में, वो इंटरपर्सनल रिलेशनशिप के पर्सपेक्टिव में, तो अपर्णा जोशी जी ने अभी ये ऑफर किया है कि आईकेयर के माध्यम से जो है उसका हम लोग चाहेंगे, हम लोग सारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स को एक आपका डिटेल्स भी, अपर्णा जी इफ यू ओके विद इट, उसका डिटेल्स हम शेयर कर देंगे, ताकि यहाँ आज की तारीख में जितने सारे पार्टिसिपेंट जुड़े हैं, मुझे पता है कि ये पर्सनली अपने अलावा ये बहुत सारे और भी लोगों की मदद कर सकते हैं। तो हम चाहेंगे कि आज जो शुरुआत हुई है, हमारा जो इंटरनेशनल वुमेन्स डे है वो 8 मार्च को है, आज एक बहुत अच्छी शुरुआत हुई है जहाँ बहुत सारे कमिटमेंट्स हुए हैं, न सिर्फ हम जो काम कर रहे हैं अपने ऑफिशियल प्रोफेशनल लाइफ में, बट सर्टेन कमिटमेंट्स टू द पर्सनल सेल्फ which is working out a better balance. And if you can improve your personal efficiency through a better balance, probably that is something which brings, kind of, much better in us. My phrase hai, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. So, let's kind of acknowledge that we are going through the tough times, but the tough has to get going. And I, acknowledge like the fact that Lata said appreciation, women need that in the family, at workplace, at all. But at the same time, like women are also kind of selflessly giving all the time. They're selflessly giving even without expecting any reward, any recognition, because that is also like a feminine style of leadership. So I think, no greater a time than today when this kind of a feminine style of leadership is needed, where we kind of give, giving with care, with empathy, with compassion, with a full understanding of the 360-degree vision, the holistic vision, rather than a tunnel vision that we are only living, looking at things in piecemeal. So with this, I would once again thank Ms. Vibhuti Patel for giving excellent overview of the diversity of challenges faced, for especially during the pandemic times, the kind of socio-economic financial impact, Mrs. Madhu Garg for giving the challenges in the bureaucracy, the government, the self-actualization, and the kind of policy challenges for a bureaucrat, Dr. Saumya for talking about the need again, like for the work-life balance, be it in our professional life, in our personal life, the right to the access to justice. So understanding these various dimensions which exist in the public sphere and the personal sphere, violence in many different forms. Dr. Aparna Joshi again for you're talking about this continuum between the illness and the wellness, which is something really interesting. The various continuums that you've talked about. Miss Nina Pandey to be talking about the need to rethink the role of the civil society institutions to bring in, empathy and social cohesion. And Ms. Preeti towards the end talking about the intersectionality of women's life, and the integration again, which is really needed, within the family system, professional life, and the need for a very professional approach for organizations, for employers, to rise up to the demand of the hour, the need of the hour. And I would like to thank each and every panelist, each and every participant, and the team which has been a part of the organizing team, Anvar from SRCW, then Lata, Anurag, Pragya, Rimjim, Minakshi, Rahul, so all of them sitting in Humra. So, I would like to thank each and every one of you, that you have made a good beginning. Please carry it on. You have excellent support group. The network which I can see today of the support group, which brings immense knowledge power, thought power to bring in the promise of a balance between what I personally feel is between, say, mind, body, and soul, which is the essence. Thanks, and wishing a very, very happy Women's Day coming ahead with a promise to empower in many different ways, all the women that we are in a position to impact. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists and participants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see so many of my friends from all over India. Yeah. Hi, Saumya. Congratulations, Saumya. Now you are a full professor.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Patel ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Desai. They have a very huge program called Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao in Kolhapur
Yes, ma'am.
University. Yeah, they also had international webinar.
Yes, ma'am. Just we will collaborate also Women's Development Center, ICALL,
Yeah.
next coming year.
Happy Women's Day.
Yes, happy Women's Day, ma'am.
That day also I started. Good job. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I used to thank each and everyone.
Thank you,
of
Anvar
this
Sadath.
thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this has
Thank you,
become
conducting, ma'am.
a great success.
Nafiz, ma'am, sir.
Good show, Anwar.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
15 more.
Apa?
Hello? Hello?